welcome everyone to our latest installment, Zowie's interview series. Super excited to have another amazing guest with me. Years of experience leading a variety of e-commerce brands. And today, I don't think I need to tell anyone that COVID brought on a massive shift to the e-commerce ecosystem. But now as we move into a post-COVID world, I think many companies are now facing an entirely new set of problems that require a new set of solutions. So that's what we'll be discussing today. As for that amazing guest, I'm joined today by David Louis, CEO and President of Co-Write International. David, want to say hello to our audience?
Yeah, Chris, thanks for having me, and hello everyone tuning in. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, and I think we're both a little under the weather, so apologies in advance to our audience if you hear some sniffles or some sneezes during this one. Fighting through it here. And for myself, I'm Chris Keene, Head of Marketing here at Zowie. And one last reminder before we get started, anyone attending, please feel free to leave any questions you have for David or myself in the comments, and we'll either address them during the interview or at the end during our Q&A. And so with that, we can hop right into it. All right. So David, first things first, like I said, excited to have you joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and how you ended up where you are today?
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I'll try to speak clearly because my throat's a bit weird right now. But anyways, I've been born in retail and running in retail for the last 30 years. Had the opportunity to work with some amazing brands around the world, and really focused on primarily Canada. Have some global international experience as well. But over time, just love the idea of retail, love servicing customers and giving them and inspiring them with goods and products that inspire their daily lives. That's been my background for the last 30 years, kind of dating myself. Started young. Yeah. And where I'm at Co-Write, Chris, I think before I even go into Co-Write, I probably have to give you a bit of history to lead up to where Co-Write is. And so I want to try to give you a history that dates back 71 million years, but in less than 2 minutes, right? So a bit of history lesson. 71 million years ago, in our oceans were swimming shell-like creatures called ammonites. So while the dinosaurs were roaming the land, the shell-like creatures were swimming in the oceans. And over these millions of years, over time, of course, when the extinction of dinosaurs, there's also the ammonites became extinct. And you can find ammonites anywhere in the world as fossils, but only one spot in southern Alberta will you find very unique iridescent colors on their shells. And Co-Write was the pioneer of the ammonite industry. So it's a very young industry. And through mining and excavating ammonites, we discovered, or basically respecting our indigenous roots as well with the Blackfoot territory. But we discovered these very unique iridescent shells that actually I have one behind me. You can see with colors, but it's only one spot in the world. And we mine, excavate, design, manufacture, and ammonites. These are called ammonites, and the shell, the layer of the ammonites, because we mine, they come in chips. We call it amylite. And the amylite chips, we turn them into jewelry and gemstones. And we sell it across the world. We're in over 28 countries. Wow. And a very rapid growing e-commerce platform today.
Amazing. I love to learn something new. It's something that's always amazing working with retailers and e-commerce is the very unique products and that are sold and where there's a market for. So I personally just learned something there. So that was great. Sorry, go ahead.
No, a bit of history lesson. So I try to condense it.
I love it. And so 30 years in retail. So I assume you've kind of seen it all in terms of the industry going through changes. If you had to just narrow it down to one change that's been the biggest shift for you as someone in senior leadership, what is it? How has the space shifted most?
Wow. Okay. I think if you look at traditional retail, it's been primarily focused on bricks and mortar, like the store
Mhm.
itself. With the growth in e-commerce, digitization, it became very seamless. So I think that's a major shift. Retailers are now speaking to consumers in multiple channels, whether it's through social media, online marketplaces, the physical retail store, shop and shops, like the whole gamut. And that's why I love retail, because it's ever changing. And frankly, I live with the model of if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
We're going to put a pin in that change management because I think we're going to circle back to that one. So we'll come back to that because I think that's the true reality of retail. But bringing back to Co-Write, and so you joined right around April 2020. So right as COVID's getting underway. So fun time to join in organization. Can you just walk us through what the business strategy was right when you joined? So pre-COVID, and then what was that first initial shock like? How did you guys adapt there?
So actually, Chris, I don't think it was I had any pre-COVID. It was right
Okay.
into COVID.
Mhm. Yeah, sure.
um, but yeah, I mean, when I decided to join, and of course, the declaration of the pandemic, and it was a very interesting moment of time. Pre-COVID, the business was very focused on B2B, um, almost a zero presence of online, and we didn't know the customer because mainly we do B2B. The B2B partner worked with the consumer, so we didn't have any consumer data. So um, with COVID, it really rapidly changed the business model. Um, but we went through a period of time in 2020 when I joined. We decided as a board to put the company under creditor protection. We under for restructuring. So we spent practically 9 months restructuring the business. We lost some people along the way. As you know, if you look at our vertical and our business channels, it was highly
Yeah.
interrupted, because we were heavily on cruise ships. Retail was lockdowns. We sold heavily in Asia. You've seen the Hong Kong riots prior to COVID hitting. So we were hit with a whole gamut of challenges. However, the 9 months of restructuring enabled us to move quicker. We shifted the business to more direct to consumer. We launched a proper online store that we have started to sell. And I created a strategy that, I always say, we support the core, expand for more, meaning, our core channels, we will always support it because they mean so much to us. But our new expansion and expanding for more is really going online direct to consumer. So we started selling into online in North America, online into China, into Asia,
Mm.
and we've turned around the company. It's and my partner and I, by the end of 2020, we purchased the company out of the restructuring, and we've been on a massive turnaround, a new rebranding, new product launches, online, then slowly progressing into working with retailers as retail starts to reopen. Our cruise ship partners have reopened. So, and we also opened new channels around the world. So we're having a lot of momentum, which we're pretty excited about for 2023.
Yeah, and I mean, a pretty remarkable story there of like resilience and figuring out the right strategy when times get tough. Something that I think is really interesting and probably timeless and not so much even COVID. Just like you said, you're heavily focused on B2B, and you actually didn't really understand your customer as you right when you started to make that shift to online direct to consumer. How did you go about as a leader? Um, to understand your customer? Like, what did that process look like? Because I think that's something obviously every e-commerce brand just needs to know at all given times. What did that look like at Co-Write?
It was difficult because we have a lot of retailers that weren't willing to share a lot of data, but
Mm,
we try to extract as much data first of all with our existing partners that we sell to as much as we can. We went out and conducted surveys. We did some focus groups. We did some, just trying to understand who they were, and frankly, started from scratch.
yeah.
And because Asia, for example, very different demographic, different mindset than North America, and we also sell into Europe. So
Yeah.
we had to try to get as much data as we can, but at the same time, is that 80-20 or 70-30, right? You if you understand only 70%, 80%, you take a shot. You'd have to take a shot, and that's what we did. And over time, like we grew, I mean, very nominal e-com business, but we grew exponentially, and we started to know who that customer was, and which made us actually better because we were able now to curate product that actually resonate with the consumer, versus in the past we would do more B2B and we would do one product assortment, and that became an everyday type of program. Now we're introducing new programs. So understand that customer was a challenge, but now we have a better pulse. We have, we built personas. And of course, when you talk about e-commerce, that customer data now has enabled us to better target and profile our audiences online.
Yeah.
And speak to those consumers. Right.
Yeah. And totally, I think, being marketing, it's like you got to roll up your sleeves and start from scratch, and it requires hard work, but the payoff is huge. And you mentioned, shift to online. So what are your main online acquisition channels now? Just curious if you mind sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, when we first started off, a lot of it was paid, right?
Yeah.
Paid advertising, just to drive traffic and drive awareness. But we also, based on the time of COVID, with consumers not willing to spend, or very, carefully of where they would want to spend their dollars, we offer, promotions and discounts and etc. And we find that over time, some of our loyal customers actually were quite forgiving. I mean, this was completely against normal marketing branding strategies, whereas like don't discount your product because you just will kill your market.
Yeah.
We actually did the opposite. I think, surveying the customers that we built over 12 months, many of them actually built more affinity to us because we gave them an introduction to our product at a reasonable price. And when we started to increase and do less promotions, we see the conversion continue to remain the same. So, it just our customers became very forgiving and loyal to us throughout the process.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Always good to have a good customer base like that. So I think that the story of building like an online business during COVID is like I said, pretty amazing. What you guys achieved at time of massive upheaval. Getting into the main topic, like we're kind of, I think a lot of people, post COVID world and reopening and retail is shifting, back a little bit. So I'm curious if that's what you're seeing. Is the landscape undergoing a big shift, and how are you now approaching, the changes in the consumer and the landscape as we move into this post-COVID world?
Yeah. So when we started off, like I expand for more, support the core, expand for more. So we, as a team, we never lost sight of the core. But right. So we're always prepared for when physical retail comes back, or cruise retail comes back, we're always there and ready to support them. In the meantime, in parallel, we're launching online and new endeavors online, live streaming into China. So, so we do see that landscape shifting. I was actually quite pleased to be shopping in Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Like people actually were lining up in stores. And in Canada here, we have Boxing Day, Boxing Week, end of December. So people are actually going back into stores, and I've seen customers hold their phones and shopping in the store. So I think having that seamless experience across, devices or channels is very important. So I see that evolving post-COVID, but the convenience factor is still very important. So what that means is checkout in store, maybe ease of checkout, touchless payment processing, whether you buy online, pick up in store, all that stuff, all has to be convenient, fast, and entertaining. Like the whole customer experience has to be, you have to give a reason for a customer to visit you, right? But I do see that changing the landscape today, post-COVID.
Very, I mean, super interesting. I think, again, giving away evergreen kind of advice there, that seamless customer experience. You need to give people a reason, and you need to make it easy for them to remain customers and keep them happy. Talking about the shifting landscape, because obviously you've had success online and building this online business. How heavily are you leaning back into some of the pre-COVID tactics? I know you kind of joined right the outside of COVID. You're talking on the B2B side of the business, so cruise ships are starting to come back. The stuff that Co-Write was doing prior to COVID. How are you balancing that with what the business you built during COVID?
Yes, I think frankly, I think changing our organization to think customer first, trying to understand who our customer first, has enabled us to build tactics that strengthen our pre-COVID tactics, meaning it has improved our B2B tactics, meaning thinking as retailers for retailers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we create now retail programs where here's just not like here's an order or a product that you can buy from us. Here's a whole retail program, because now we understand how a consumer considers us and what time frame. Like we actually discovered, like, it takes a customer about 60 days, a new customer to a conversion, right?
Yeah.
And then through that path, through that journey, what are they looking for? So we're now able to take that program, educate the retailer, our partners, on storytelling and how we merchandise our shelves, etc. So we are taking a retailer approach to work with our retailers back into our pre-COVID days. So we've changed our way of approach on the B2B side.
That's super interesting and makes total sense to take those learnings you got from online and apply it to the other core parts of your business. Super interesting. And I think the big thing here, and you mentioned at the beginning, I said we'd put a pin in it. It's just constant change, and you're a leader of a global brand. How, in your position, do you approach change management, both from, like, to your point, support your core and like your key strategies, but also from like a human capital and keeping people motivated and building an organization that is nimble enough to embrace the changes and what is required to adapt to the environment?
Yeah, Chris, I tell you, I mean, I'm sure other companies have experienced the same. We went through a very interesting time, right? With COVID, we went through a restructuring process under creditor protection, included furlough of people that we've lost. So we had institutional knowledge that we lost. We went through a closing and sales transaction of a new company, launching new channels at the same time. And we practically were half the size of our team going into the new world of Co-Write. So yeah, motivation of the team. I'm blessed with a great team, frankly.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of long-term employees that have been with Co-Write for many, many years, a 43-year-old company. And so our average tenure is about 22 years.
Wow.
Right? So you talk about change and thinking newness. So we have that core group, plus I added new additional talent that blended that hockey team, right? So we have an A team that is as agile enough to make changes, and frankly, shifting direct to consumer, thinking retail's day to day. B2B is not necessarily day to day. You're selling in maybe a few 6 months, 9 months down the road, but encouraging the teams, being transparent, collaboration. And frankly, the way when managing the team is, I communicate with them. Sometimes I over communicate, and it's okay, right? It's better for them to know more than little. But we're a collaborative team, and we rally together and we plow through. So I'm blessed with a really awesome team that's resilient and continues to fight the day-to-day battle.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, company's been around for so long, and the average tenure, that's an amazing stat, as long as you cited. And to say motivated and to embrace that shift, I think is a testament to what you. Were there any struggles you had to kind of win over maybe some of the longer tenured, and to be like, hey, this is what the business needs to achieve the long term goals? And did anything like really work for you? Maybe with some of the people who'd been there through it all.
Yeah, I mean, you get the comments like, "Oh, we've tried this, we've done this, we've never worked." And well, I'm a firm believer history does not dictate the future necessarily, right? Let's learn from the history, and then how do we apply that to the future and make changes? So I think I was faced with a lot of that at the beginning, but over time, I had to be very hands-on. So I had to show that it can work. And once our core teams have seen it work, you celebrate the smaller wins. You come out and admit the mistakes, correct the mistakes. But as long as you're transparent and collaborative, the buy-in becomes way easier, right? And then hearing their voice is so important. So yeah, I ran into that type of resistance, and frankly, I think today, I say to the team, it's like retail speak versus wholesale speak. And now I say the team is speaking retail. They're thinking the customer first. So it's been a pretty amazing transformation. It's not easy, Chris. It's not easy.
Yeah, I think anyone who leads any team will know that changing a culture, the way you talk or think about your customer, it takes, you got to roll up your sleeves. And I think something you said around, you had to kind of be the one to show it working. Like you gotta be willing to do the work that you're telling other people to do, or else you're not going to get that buy-in. It makes total sense. I think it's super important.
And we have teams in Asia that I've never met yet.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. So I'm doing through Teams or Zoom videos, trying to change management through video. But they are very well. I guess you know what I've always said. COVID actually gave us the best excuse to make change, and I think the team saw that, and because our core channels were shut down for a period of time, so it did help me to force the change that was required.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think so many organizations going through massive change, and it's funny, working with an international team definitely has its own challenges that make all the work you just kind of talked about that much harder when you're not in person. So kudos to you for making that happen. And looking at the world a little bit more broadly, bringing it back to some trends and whatnot. Obviously, a lot of words: inflation, a lot of recession, seeing layoffs, AI. What are early in the year? What are your biggest challenges currently, and what are you really mainly focused on as a CEO and leader of an e-commerce brand right now?
Good question. You talk about recession, inflation. Those are, I call those negative words, right?
Yeah.
So I like to use the word momentum. So everything that we do, the team is very focused on creating positive momentum. Control the controllables, challenge the uncontrollables, and create momentum. So yeah, let's celebrate the wins, celebrate the progress, admit the faults, and move on quickly. So I'm not sure this helped answering the question, but it's a loaded one. But I'm a firm believer of creating momentum, and keeping that moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it is helpful, because something you said I think is super important is, talking about controlling what you can control. No one can control the macro environment. Yes, obviously as leaders, you should be aware and you have to understand how it could affect the business. But at the end of the day, especially, thinking about the team and keeping them motivated, make sure that you're executing on what you need to execute on and celebrating those wins. Because the small stuff adds up over the long run. So I think that honestly is it's sage advice that anyone can take. Yeah. Well, cool. So these were the big questions we want to get through. We do have a question from the audience, which I'm going to post your way now in our last couple of minutes here, David. So,
Okay.
Thinking about e-commerce platforms that built their business on a digital base during the pandemic, how, and we've kind of talked this a little bit, but how should they think about adopting to the fast pace of changes as we move to the COVID world? You've kind of discussed this a little bit, but let's revisit that.
Sorry, let me just have a quick. What advice would you give to e-commerce?
Yeah.
Great question, thank you, Sophia. What advice would you give to e-commerce fans that built their business on it? Well, my first thing that comes to mind is you're probably, if you're performance driven, to drive traffic and that acquisition funnel through performance. Don't forget about building your brand and tell them the story about your brand. So what does that mean? Content building, storytelling, depending on what brand you are, you tell the story, be present, be visible. A lot of e-commerce brands can get caught up and have been caught up. And in fact, I think it's been changing, paid advertising, performance driven, just pure lower funnel tactics. Just don't forget the top funnel, right?
Yeah.
And depending on your organization, I know I get knocked with the accounting folks because I want a payback, right? I need an ROI. Well,
yeah.
The ROI for a brand is long-term lifetime value of a customer. So
right.
Don't forget to build your brand. That's
you're talking to a marketer, so I totally feel that. How do you measure that brand investment? I'm also curious, to bring it, we talked about customer experience, but in terms of brand building, that's everything from experience to support. How do you actually think about some of that in terms of influencing those long-term value metrics and building the brand, or are you just kind of thinking it from more of a top of the funnel approach? Do you think about the other parts of it as like all under one umbrella?
You have to think about it holistically, right?
Yeah.
You can't have a singular focus on just lower funnel. You have that. A lot of people who are not marketers on the call. I'm talking about the marketing funnel, right? It's only the best example to kind of explain it, but you have to build your brand. Most times, like if you think about yourself as a person, your buying behavior, the brands that you gravitate towards, why do you gravitate towards them? Not because they have a 50% off sale. It's because you trust the brand, you know the brand, and so build that, right? So build your brand, but at the same time, of course, you have to acquire customers. But you think about it holistically, 360. Yeah.
That little pesky reality of having to acquire customers at the end of the day.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are at time. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time and your time as we run up here at the end. But David, it was really great speaking with you. Really appreciate you having it on. I think amazing story of Co-Write's transition during COVID and your growth post. So excited to follow you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We'll wrap there.